a guide to better looking emails. This webinar is part of the email series in the Digital Toolbox from RoundPeg. My name is Lorraine Ball, and I'm going to be your host today. I've had an opportunity to work with companies on their email marketing now for almost 20 years, and we've learned a couple of things along the way, and I'm going to share with you today some of my favorite tips and tricks for improving the look of your email campaigns. Let's get this out on the table right away. First impressions matter. If people open up an email and it hurts their eyes to look at it, they are not going to wade in. They are not going to read what you have to say. They're going to close it. They may even delete it or unsubscribe from your list. And so it is so critical that when people open your email, they have a good experience and a great first impression. We know that 50% of emails are opened on mobile devices, and we expect this number will continue to rise. And so you have to think about the mobile experience. You have to make sure that you are, just like with a website, that you are designing a mobile-first experience. Because when email doesn't look good on mobile, 80% of people simply delete the email. They don't save it and go, well, I'll look at it on my desktop. No, we all get so much email that if something doesn't work, we just delete it and move on. You don't get an opportunity to go back and get a second chance. And even more alarming than this statistic is this one. 20% of people who get an email that doesn't look good on mobile simply unsubscribe permanently. So not only do you lose the opportunity to deliver that message, you lose the opportunity to deliver any message. And here's the thing. Little changes can lead to big improvements. The things I'm going to show you today do not require that you have some amazing graphic designer on staff. Of course, it helps if you do, but a lot of what you can do to improve your email is common sense. It is all about simplifying and clarity and organization. And you can do all those things with a good email marketing tool and a little bit of common sense. So throughout this presentation, I'm going to use this poor example from Half Moon Yoga and this revised example from the same organization to drive home different points about organizing your data, simplifying your font, picking relevant colors, and just looking at these two side by side. Well, you tell me, which one do you want to read? First thing that is really important in your email is that your branding should look consistent everywhere. That when people move from your website to your email, to your Facebook or social media platforms, that there's this consistency, that you are identifiable as to who you are. But here's the trick. Branding consistency, definitely you want to make sure that your logo is represented everywhere you go. Now I'm going to let you in on a secret. You see our logo, RoundPeg? It's a lovely horizontal logo, and it looks really good at the top of every web page or the bottom of a PowerPoint presentation. You know where that logo does not look good? It does not look good on social media. Why? Because in social media, instead of having a rectangular box to work with, I have a tiny little square. And so what we designed long ago was a little R and a little P that we use as our social media avatar. And so we actually have now two versions of our logo, the standard and the social. And we use both of those logos on our business cards. We use both of those logos in a lot of our branding and marketing. Why? To make that connection. So as people move from one platform to another, they don't think that they're dealing with a different brand. Colors. The The blue and the teal is consistent. And again, as you look from Round Peg, for example, to our digital toolbox, there is a consistency between these two brands that they look like they belong together, even though they have distinct and unique identities. And when you look at even the background on the slides, that's our teal. Language. This is a little harder, but consistency of language, how you talk about things, words that you use, standard messaging should move, again, through all the platforms. And images. Not necessarily the same picture all the time, but the same style. Consistency does not mean that it is exactly the same. And this is a good example. This is Baked by Melissa, and their primary avatar is their little macaron, and they use pictures of these macarons everywhere, but what you see is different images. They're not locked into it's only this picture everywhere. On their website, they've got kind of these 3 cupcakes with a lot of white space around them. In the email, you've got a nice close-up of what they're calling cupcarons. And on the Facebook page cover, it is a wider picture. Again, there's consistency, but not identical. And that is the trick of great branding. When you have a clear, consistent branding style, you can flex a little bit as you move from platform to platform without losing a sense of who you are. Okay, font choices. You're going to see me use this phrase a lot in the presentation. Less is more. Just because you've got lots of font choices available does not mean you need to use all of them. As you're thinking about your font choices, in general, I want you to limit the fonts that you use in an email to 2, maybe 3 for an accent or a headline, but really and truly 2. You want to make sure that your fonts are easy to read. I'm going to show you some examples of what I call display fonts that are fun for a title or a little bit of interest, but are not a good idea for body copy. You want to make sure that your fonts are mobile friendly. Not all fonts are, and so you get really wonky versions of your email if you don't pick your fonts carefully. And for the most part, you want to design for single column. There are times that you can do a side-by-side as long as you're using a mobily responsive template. So when I view the email in mobile, one of the 2 columns goes on top of the other. You absolutely do not want to have a template where 2 columns display side-by-side on a mobile phone. Fonts before and after. Let's take a look at this. Okay, I want to know what kind of psychedelic drug this person was taking that made them use these font choices and think that this was a good thing. First off, there are so many different fonts on this page that I don't know where to look. I don't really know what the Half Moon Yoga's branding is about. This scripty font is a display text that, number 1, is really hard to read. Number 2, it may or may not display on everybody's computer. If I don't have this font on my computer, I'm not going to see this text looking like this. And then down here, they went to something that I can only refer to as a typewriter font. Again, I'm not sure what they were thinking or why they thought that was a good idea or why they thought it had anything to do with the branding of the Half Moon Yoga. Down here, they're using, I believe this is papyrus because it's a very funky font, and it was really popular about 10 years ago for anybody who was in yoga or essential oils or any kind of spiritual sort of lane. This font has a very kind of Indian, or Asian feel to it. Great. It looks cool in a title, but you should not do a paragraph in Papyrus, and not everybody's got it on their computer. The other thing is this black text on a dark green background. I don't care how big I make this, no human being can read it. Well, I take it back. Maybe those 20-year-old developers can. Because here's the thing, people. As we get older, something happens to our eyes. We don't like to admit it, but if you're over 40, you're probably wearing reading glasses because your eyes are not as flexible as they used to be. You can't read small fonts, and you have more trouble on backgrounds that are not high contrast. So the white on the dark green is very readable, but the black on the dark green is not. The black on the gray, same problem. There's not enough contrast. And we're going to talk more about colors in a minute. Let's switch over and look at the example where they've really done things right. Number one, they've moved their logo out of the corner and dead center, so you know who the email is from. They've arranged their text in a single column, and they've gone simple on the fonts. Pretty much everything in this email is one font. The only thing they've done is they've got some bold and some bigger sizes and some smaller sizes. This is an extremely readable font, and they have picked a style font that is similar to their logo, but it is not exactly their logo. And that's okay, because this is a display font and it may not be readily available everywhere. But this font is clean, it's simple, it's easy to read. The other thing that they've done is they've got a nice contrast going on here in their call to action. We're going to talk about it probably more a little bit later, but something I want to say now and I'll repeat later. For your calls to action, they should be all capital. Now, I am not a big fan of all cap. I mean, all you have to do is look at my logo with the lowercase round peg, and you can tell that I'm sort of the E.E. Cummings of the marketing world. But when it comes to a call to action, when you're trying to command attention and get somebody to do something, it's okay to use all caps and make it feel like you're yelling at them a little bit, just a little bit, in a friendly way. But this button will have a lot more impact if sign up today is in all caps. When it comes to picking fonts, you have choices between serif and sans serif and a little bit of fonts in between. This is a traditional serif font, straight lines, rounded letters. This is an example of kind of a blend font where there's a little bit of a tail, but for the most part, the capital letters and most of the letters are going to have these nice straight lines. A serif font is going to have these little tails on all the letters, and this is actually just more of a display serif font. And again, you still have those tails. The tails on serif font, if you are over 40 years old, you learned to read probably using a book called the Dick and Jane Reader or some other version of that book. It used a very chunky serif font, and we learned to read upper and lower case with these nice letters with these tails. What the tails do, if you actually put 2 pages of information in front of someone, printed, not on a computer, but printed, The paragraph or the page that is written with a serif font is actually easier to read than the paragraph that is sans serif. Why? These little tails pull your eye across the page, and serif fonts actually sort of stop you and pull your eye down. And you notice I said in print. The problem as we have moved from print material to digital is these serifs do not translate as well to a digital environment. On a computer screen, on a mobile screen, you are way better doing most of your text in sans serif font. So, serif fonts, they are best for printed material, harder to read online. Some of the most popular are Baskerville, Georgia, Times Roman. Garamond is really good as well. It's a kind of a nice round fat font. So who uses serif fonts? We typically see a lot of older established organizations that have got logos with serif fonts. Think of many of the banks that you know, the law firms, the accounting firms. They tend to have a logo that has a serif font. What I recommend for these clients so that your email looks like the rest of your branding is use the serif fonts just on your titles and your subject lines so that it's kind of big and visible, but when you get into the meat of your email, you really want to move to sans serif. Sans serif is much easier to use on the web. It's much better for websites for small text. This PowerPoint presentation is done in a sans serif font with just a little bit of a tail. This is Fira Sans. It's a streamlined version of Trebuchet, which is one of the first crossover fonts, but very clean, very easy to read on screens. Some of the most popular and some of the most common sans serif fonts are Arial, Helvetica, and Verdana. Helvetica was originally more of a Mac font. Arial and Verdana were more common on PCs. Verdana was originally considered to be the most readable web font. It's a little fatter and a little rounder, and it works really well. Helvetica is probably, I'm a font geek. Helvetica is definitely the prettiest of the three fonts, and it is more common now than it used to be. If you don't have a favorite, take a look at your documents in Helvetica. I think you'll really like the way they look. And then there's a category of fonts that I call the display fonts. These are fun. They look great on flyers and when you're trying to create a feeling of something being kid-friendly or casual or a little bit more formality. Again, you have to be really careful when you're picking a display font because it may not display on everybody's computer. I would use them very sparingly, and I would limit them. First off, it's very hard to read more than one or two words in any of these. I might use them on a picture or on a graphic or as a title, but really, really limit. Don't ever try to do an entire holiday message in an email in this text. You can do it on a printed flyer, but not in an email. And when you're picking fonts, have a reason. Have a reason that you have chosen a display font or a bold font or, well, in general, there is no reason for this design, but let's pretend that there is. I would still revise it and have it look more like this. Now you'll notice there are three pictures side by side by side. This is a mobile friendly template, and when this displays on my phone, New Zealand is going to be underneath France and Iceland is going to be under New Zealand, so it will reconfigure. I really like the way this newsletter is laid out. You have your title in all all caps, which is okay. I prefer title case to all caps for anything longer than a few words, but I think this is still pretty readable. I love that they've put the button in that all cap book now. I probably would even make this 1 or 2 points larger. And they use this display font, and this is Pristina. They've used it just one time on the whole email. And so your eye is drawn to it. You notice it. It's not overwhelming. Everything else uses the same font. So when you introduce this display font here, it stands out. It calls attention to exactly what you want people to see, those featured destinations. So font with a purpose. More text tips, just some things to kind of keep in mind. The first is you want to use, again, either your logo font or a compatible alternative. When we first launched RoundPeg, this font that we used for the round is a font called Clarendon, and it is a really fat, chunky font. And as much as I like it in my logo, it's really hard to read when we use it in lots of other places. So we use it very sparingly. If I want to use a serif font, I typically would use something like Garamond or Times Roman. Well, Times Roman's a little too small, but Garamond or Century Schoolbook, which are kind of big, fat fonts. So they are compatible. We actually have found a new font that is web safe, that's very similar, that we're going to start using a lot more of. Use all caps sparingly. Use it when you want to call attention to something. When you do more than a few words in all caps, not only does it feel like you're yelling at me, it's actually hard to read. Why? Because we learn to read with upper and lowercase letters. Our brain processes those varying heights and we can read faster. I used to have a boss who he didn't learn to type in high school like the girls did. And so he didn't really understand how the shift key worked. And he would set the caps lock and he would start typing memos. And so we would get these one-page emails that were in all caps. And literally, I couldn't read it. I would simply copy the text, put it in a Microsoft Word document, and take it to all lowercase. It was the only way I could really efficiently read what he had sent me. And white space. Do not feel like you have to cram something in every inch of this email. Give people a moment or two to breathe. All right, we've talked about font. Now let's talk about colors. And you'll notice less is more. Just as I promised, it is as important when you're picking colors that you dial down the choices as it is when you're doing fonts. In general, 2 primary colors. Now, I don't mean primary in terms of red, blue, and yellow. I mean 2 main colors. You can have some secondary colors, maybe one other for a call to action button, but pick 2 colors so that the email feels consistent and relaxed and not overwhelming. Add a pop of color for a button. Pick one more color that you use to kind of spice things up. And if you're going to have a lot of dense copy, make sure you've got a light color underneath it. So if you remember in that example, here we go. Dense copy. We have a whole paragraph in black on a green background. Nobody can read this. So here we have the same information presented in a much better layout. The colors, the green and the purple, are the green and the purple from their logo. So we got rid of this heavy gray that really had nothing to do with their branding. I'm guessing this olive green is in the same color family as the light green, but I have no idea why they chose sort of the unattractive stepsister color rather than the main color that is most attractive and really closer to the way the logo is displaying. I love how they use that little pop of purple to call your attention to the button that they really want you to click. And then throughout the rest of it, they're really presenting you with just gray. I love the little bits of white and the space between the different classes. And they've done something nice with the bold and the normal text. They probably could have even gone up a point size on some of these titles to make them jump out a little bit more. So, two colors, attractive colors, colors that are consistent with the brand. Little bit about color, some numbers. I thought these were kind of fun statistics and get you to think a little bit about the colors that you're choosing. The first is that 85% of consumers make decisions based on color. The color of your brand, the brand associations bring to mind things that move customers to or away from your product. 80% of people, when customers see a product or a brand in color, it increases their recognition. I saw this in play. I hadn't even been in business very long, maybe 2 years, and I'd been sending out my email newsletters, and they were blue and teal and teal and blue. And another marketing company in town, she started up about the same time I did, and she rebranded. She'd had some other colors, and she actually rebranded to look just like me. She had a 2-word logo, and she did the blue in the front and the teal in the back, and she sent out her first newsletter. And a friend of mine sent it to me and said, you know, when I first saw this, I thought it was you. My branding was so clearly established as blue and teal and blue that when somebody else started using the colors, people actually thought of me instead. And 40% of all people say blue is their favorite color. So as you're looking at colors and you're thinking about colors, if you don't have a good reason for doing another color, blue is often a very safe choice. And as you look, I love this color wheel that shows kind of how colors cluster. What you see in the blue family, you see a lot of the traditional brands, Ford, IBM. You also see a lot of the early tech companies. Here's Facebook, here's AOL, LinkedIn, and Twitter. So they were trying to jump into the market and kind of establish themselves right away as sort of traditional and strong, reliable. You've got Yahoo that when they rebranded, they wanted to create a little bit more fun. They actually moved to the purple. In the green area, we tend to see a lot more playful. Yellow, a lot of items with movement and activity. You've got red for a lot of your news organizations. Pink, definitely your girl brands. There are exceptions, but it is always fun to kind of look at how do companies sort of present themselves, and then you have a few in the middle who can't decide or won't decide what their color is. Colors have meaning, and every color has both a good and a bad side. On the good side, red creates a sense of energy and motion, and when presented with something in a red color, people find their heart rates speed up a little bit. That's the good side. That's why you see a lot of clearance signs in red. Conversely, red is also a color that represents danger, warning, and stop. And so when you use a call to action and you use red in your CTA, you're creating a little bit of this push-pull. On the one hand, there's a sense of urgency, but on the other hand, there's that stop. So I don't love red as the color for buttons. I prefer orange. Orange is it's a nice happy color. It's also got a sense of energy, but it doesn't have some of that baggage that the red has with warning. It's got great visibility. It contrasts nicely with a lot of your blues and blacks, which are typically your text colors. So an orange button is a really great choice for a CTA. Yellow is very happy and very playful, but there are two challenges with yellow. The first is it's really hard to read text in yellow. So it's almost impossible to use for your headlines. The other thing is that too much yellow, there was a study done once, and too much yellow can actually make you a little nauseous. So you want to use that carefully. Purple is a strong female color. It is in full strength, it is definitely a women's power color. In lighter strengths, you see it associated a lot with women's products, colognes, beauty products, luxury products. When you get, however, into the softer shades, it works really well, like I said, for, lavenders and lilacs work really well if you're selling a perfume, if you're selling a luxury spa. But if it's a product that you want a little bit more stronger response, or you're trying to convey a little bit of boldness, I would not go too light in the purple spectrum. Blue, the most trusted color. People see blue and it conveys trust and reliability and respect. That's why IBM is big blue. It is a really nice color for your texts, for subtle backgrounds, because it goes so well with almost every other color. It really, you don't have the clash that you have when you put a red next to an orange or a red next to a purple. Blue pretty much works with everything. Green is actually one of the most readable colors online. It's one of the easiest colors for people to process. If you're going to use green for text, stay in the darker range. If you're going to use it as a call to action, really take it into kind of that lighter range. Green is certainly associated with anything and brings to mind associations of environmentally friendly and eco-friendly types of products. It's also got a nice wealth and luxury feel with it. The pink is definitely a girly color. I typically avoid pink except when we're talking about products targeting 15 to 25-year-old women. I have made some exceptions for some very bold pinks, again, to kind of connect with bold purple for strong women's products, but it is not necessarily as versatile a color as some of the others. And black. Black is definitely a luxury color. Black and white photography is definitely upscale. Black and white photography also works really well if you're trying to play down, if you're using stock photography and you want people to sort of see the images but relate to them. We do this a lot with remodeling contractors and our flooring customers. We want people to envision the room in their mind. And so if I use a color photo, suddenly they're looking at the pillows and the pillows are orange and they don't like orange pillows, or the carpeting is a dark brown and they really don't like that. If we do it in black and white, it neutralizes it and it makes it easier for customers to go, oh, I could see that in my house. The challenge is that colors don't mean the same thing to everyone. Blue is high on trust for people, green less so. When you're trying to convey reliability, shades of blue work really well, so does black. High quality, black and shades of gray definitely work. If you're going for speed, there is nothing better than a little bit of red. However, for some people, those red shades also scream cheap and terror. If you're trying to convey strength and courage, purple, red, and sometimes blue work well. On the other hand, the wrong shade of purple really says fun. So think about the message you're trying to create. Think about the colors that you pick and what it's conveying. A lot of times you can mitigate some of these color impressions with how you balance it. Putting the blue and black together is going to give a nice, sleek, high-tech feel. It will give you some nice security and reliability points. Adding a little bit of purple right here will not really take away, but it may not necessarily enhance either. If you're trying to match colors, if you have a logo and you're trying to figure out, because a lot of your web products actually use a hexadecimal color, but your print is going to use RGB. For PowerPoint, you have to use RGB. If you're not sure your color formulas, if you've got a Mac computer, there's a built-in tool, the digital color meter. If you are using a PC, you can go to colorcop.net and download the color matching tool. Unless, of course, you have something like Adobe Illustrator already on your computer. If you're trying to decide what colors you should use, these two tools are really great because you can go into Adobe and you can type in your color and it will give you a nice color palette that goes with it. Color Schemer will do the same thing. So if you're not sure what colors you should be using, what will be a nice complement, this is a great place to start. Simplify, simplify, simplify. I want you to accept the fact that you can't put everything in your email. And the truth is, instead of putting a lot of information in the email, the best thing you can possibly do is give me a teaser and then give me a link to where I can find more information on your website. That will allow you to gauge who's really interested in your content. Well, but what if they don't click? Well, then they're not interested, because if they're interested, they'll click. It allows you to put a lot of information that I can skim really quickly and get to what I really want to know. And if you really feel like you have so much information to shove in that monthly newsletter and it has to be really long, well, then I'm going to tell you maybe you need to do 2 newsletters a month, because nobody is going to read all the way to the bottom of that long email. So organize and then optimize for mobile. Don't use tiny fonts. Less than a 10-point font, not going to read it. Don't go really long, and avoid the multiple columns. So let's look at layout. Again, clean. This straight line makes a lot of sense. The one thing I might do is I might add another button down here for something. As far as the design though, you want to make sure that your first call to action, we used to say make sure it appeared above the scroll, but these days as people are looking at emails on tablets and phones, we don't really know where the scroll is. So I would say you want to make sure that this button is in the top third of your layout, so that when it appears on the screen, I see that call to action. You want to make sure this is an old style email. This looks great on your desktop. It is worthless on mobile. Here's a better alternative. Headline, little bit of information, key date and time, a link, and a register button. And all of this appears in my screen before I scroll. Now the key information is right there. And use images well. If you're going to use a picture, go big. Don't give me a tiny little picture. Make it a big image. When you load pictures, make sure you go with, you include alternate text. I'm going to show you what happens to an email if you don't use alternate text. And you want to use relevant images. If the picture doesn't add value, don't do it. And then limit the words that you put on the picture. I got a great question here about for your weekly podcast, it makes sense to put a listen now button instead of just hyperlinking in the body copy. Absolutely. If you want something to someone to really do something in your email, and let me go back really quick to that example. If you want me to do something, think about the fact that I'm going to be doing this with my thumb. Which am I more likely to click on? It is the button. It's not bad to also have links, but the most important action you want someone to take should totally be connected to a button. Great question. Okay. 82% of people pay more attention to an email if it has a picture. So pictures are awesome. You want to get engaging images. Don't overdo it. Don't throw 20 pictures in an email. If you're doing an email after an event, give me one or two from the event and then give me a link to find the rest of the library. We've seen that 3 or fewer images actually get more click-through. If you give me too many images, I'm so busy looking at the pictures, I don't do anything else. When you can use pictures of real people, real places, real things, instead of stock photography, you are going to get significantly better results. You can't always do this. This is not always an option, and I understand that. And sometimes you're just picking a picture to add a little bit of color or fun to the newsletter. That's fine, but if you can do this, you're going to get more engagement. And don't use images of your content. And what I mean by that is if you've created a cool flyer for an event you have coming up, do not take a JPEG of that information and pop it into your email. Do not put something in your email that contains all of the relevant information that people need and then assume that you don't have to put any text. Why? Because 30% of users don't see images. As great as pictures are, there's a large community of us that do not display images on emails. Why don't I do that? This allows me to load emails quickly. And then if it's something that piques my curiosity, I will switch and display the email. So let me show you an example of this going very wrong. This is a company that should have known better. Viewbug sent me this email, and they have this cute little picture here. And what they wanted was for me to know that I could see statistics on my Viewbug account. And they put this cool button right in the middle. But that button is a picture. And so because I don't display my images, this is what I saw. They were smart enough to use alt text so it had Viewbug. But here, where that button was, do you notice something? There's nothing there. So we're giving away a professional tripod. Check out your stats to learn more. but I can't because I don't see the message. So, two things. Number one, that should have been a button, not a photograph. But if they were determined to make it a photo, they should have had alternate text that said, see my stats, and make it a hyperlink. This email was a complete waste of time. So when you put all of the information for your event in a picture, what I'm going to see is a giant blank space. 50% of people are more likely to read your email if it includes a video. This is really cool, and most of the email tools now will let you embed a link to Vimeo or embed a link to YouTube so that people can see those emails, can see the videos. There is a challenge because it very often opens it in a new tab, but when they're done with the video, they come back. But the videos definitely let you talk to your audience in a different way. Trick, keep those videos 90 seconds and under. There are times and places for longer videos. Email is not one of them, because remember, they're scrolling through this, they're on their phone, they're trying to clean up their email. A short message is great, a long one, they're not going to hang around. Other tips on images. You want to choose the right size. For emails, if you are using a standard width email, you want your picture to be 600 pixels wide. If you're using a wider template, maybe 795 at the most, and then your height can vary. If you take a tiny picture and you try to stretch it, you know what's going to happen. It's going to be kind of all grainy and distorted. It's way easier to size an image down than it is to size it up. You want to avoid copyright issues. You want to make sure that you own the rights or have the ability to use that picture. Just because it's on the internet does not mean you can use it. This becomes more of a problem on websites than on emails, but it is a problem for everybody. And it can backfire. I had a client who pulled an image that he actually used in a PowerPoint presentation. And so when we started working on his website and on his email newsletter, we grabbed that image because we assumed he had the rights to it, and he got a cease and desist from the person who owned the image. It is really easy to track down and find people who are using your pictures. I'm a photographer, trust me, I know. So take your own pictures or buy the rights to the picture or use a resource that allows you to access those pictures. And whenever possible, use your own photos. If you're looking for stock images, Free Digital Photos, Stock Vault, and freeimages.com are great places for small, simple, free stock photography, and a lot of email tools, and specifically I'm showing you Constant Contact. This is the tool that I use. There is a nice stock photo library. There are lots of free stock images in the library, and there are paid images that are available at $5 a pop, which, if it's the right image, that is a really reasonable price. But you can also use from your computer, your website, and your social media. And whenever possible, if you can use your images, it becomes content that only you can create, and it creates an authority and an intimacy that is unmatched. Some tips on your messaging. Keep the reader's attention by linking to resources and articles that support the information that you're putting in your newsletter. Give me a little teaser, but make me go and click on that link. That data is going to help you figure out what people like and don't like in your newsletter. Limit text to 20 lines. Newsletters that have more than 20 lines of text, I can tell you, people just don't stay with it. Images, it's best if you're about 3 or less in a newsletter. And you don't want to have 50 links. Your newsletter shouldn't look like a maze of hyperlinks, because 2 things happen. Number 1, it's so overwhelming. I don't know as a reader what I'm supposed to read. And number 2, when there are that many links and I'm trying to open a link with my thumb, I can guarantee you that half the time I'm going to hit the wrong one. So, which one are you going to be most likely to read? It's a simple question, and the answer is pretty simple as well. You have a few seconds to make the right impression. Make sure that you use that time well. So let's put it all together, a quick refresher. When you're building an email, make sure that you have your business name in text underneath that logo. So if they don't display the image, they still know it's coming from you. Use your brand colors to reinforce your brand identity. Select relevant images, and oh, by the way, they should all click and go somewhere. If you put an image anywhere in your email, think of it like a giant button and have a hyperlink to somewhere on your website that is connected to whatever is in this email. The CTA above the scroll, make sure it is in the top third. And what I would do is I would preview your email in your phone. And if this does not show up in that first screen, go ahead and move it up a little bit. Because let's face it, you're not doing this just for fun and games. You want people to actually take action when they read your email. Limit your text to 20 lines or less. And then test it. Look at it on different screens. Send it out. Get response. See what links people are clicking on. The cool thing about digital marketing that really makes me happy as a professional marketer is the ability to learn and learn and learn every time I send out content. Okay, now's a great time to ask questions if you have them. If you have additional questions, be sure to reach out to us at Lorraine Ball at roundpeg.biz. And I want to remind you that because you have registered for this class, you have a free membership for the handyman level of the digital toolbox. Go in and activate your membership today. This is where you're going to find not only the recordings from this session, but recordings from our other webinars as well. So take advantage of it, jump around and see if there are other things in the toolbox that you're interested in, and consider upgrading to our journeyman. That's it for today. We will see you